And what did Donald Trump say last night about January 6th? He called it a, quote, a day of love. But it points out something that everyone here knows. The American people are exhausted with his gaslighting. Exhausted with his gaslighting. Enough!
That was Vice President Kamala Harris today in the battleground state of Wisconsin. She's expected to take the stage at any moment now at another rally in Green Bay before heading off to Michigan and Georgia over the next few days. As we move into the final weeks of the campaign, the vice president is putting herself in front of as many voters as possible and is even taking her message into hostile territory, as we saw last night, appearing for what was a combative interview with Bret Baier on Fox. It might have been one of the few times Fox viewers heard directly from VP Harris outside the spin the network tends to put on its coverage. And joining me now is Marcia Fudge, co-chair of the Harris presidential campaign and former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in the Biden administration. Secretary Fudge, thank you so much for being here. Talk to me a little bit about the strategy here of going into what might be called hostile media territory.
First, thanks for having me, Joy. The strategy is what the vice president has said from the beginning. She wants to be the president of all of the people. And many people that she wants to represent only watch Fox. I think it's important when you go into hostile territory to be able to say the same thing you're saying in friendly territory, which is the truth. 7 million people watched that interview, Joy, last night. So 7 million people heard her talk about the truth about the economy, that the Biden-Harris team really did not inherit a good economy, that inflation really started under Donald Trump. People don't understand that he put us in $8 trillion worth of debt, lost lots of jobs, and it has been totally reversed. She talked about her vision for America, and she talked about why it was important for us to all come together and why it was important for her to be there at that time. So it's real clear to me. 7 million people.
Yeah, and that's not even to include, you know, all of the clips that are going around that lots of people saw as well. This is her today, because the other thing is sometimes hostile territory comes to you. So this is VP Harris at her rally today in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. You meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
The diss, the smile, the wave, the gather. Just in case people forget that sister went to Howard University, okay? Divine Nine knows how to gather one. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that she's talked about that actually really do go to issues that people really care about. And one of them is one you know very much a lot about since you were a HUD director, and it's the issue of housing. Let's put up this poll from the Public Religion Research Institute. Housing and the increased cost of housing, 62% of voters said that is a critical issue for them, more than any other issue, even more than abortion, which is moving a lot of folks. Let you listen to Vice President Harris discussing what she's going to do on housing when Roland Martin interviewed her earlier this week.
I'm going to create tax incentives for home builders and developers to build 3 million new housing units by the end of my first term, because a big part of jacking up the prices has been the supply is not meeting demand, so the prices are higher. And when you couple that with $25,000 down payment assistance, we have the ability to give people the opportunity to achieve what generations before called the American dream, but which has been out of reach for too many people.
You have expertise, obviously, in this area, both as a former member of Congress and as a former HUD director. I mean, like, that is critical, right? And what do you make of that response and what her plans are regarding housing, since you've seen the way that that's jacked up, the prices have jacked up?
Joe, I can't tell you how excited I am about it. Housing has been a crisis in this country for decades, but it has become so big that I am so excited about the fact that this person, this vice president, understands enough about it to go at it, to actually try to find solutions, not just talk about it, find solutions. Until we put more supply into the market, we are always going to have a crisis of housing. We as a nation, Joy, for decades have not put any kind of resources into affordable housing. So we have neglected to make sure that everybody could, in fact, have the American dream because we've not made it possible. So I am all in on everything she is doing, because if somebody doesn't do it, it's going to get worse. We need 4 million housing units today, and the number grows every day. So the only way to make it better is to put more housing in the market, and I'm really, really happy that she's taking it on. It's a tough battle.
Let me play a piece from a piece of the Breakfast Club interview with Charlamagne the God. This is one of my favorite little parts of the interview because this is something that Vice President Harris doesn't do a lot, which is talking about herself and talking about her own history and her own faith. Take a listen.
I will always work closely with the church because I understand who our church leaders are and who the congregation is. We are talking about people who are driven by faith and the ability to see what is possible. By faith, where I was raised, and I know many of us were, understanding that our God is a loving God, that our faith propels us to act in a way that is about kindness and justice and mercy, that is about lifting one another up. And let's talk about the contrast here. Donald Trump and his followers spend full time trying to suggest that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, which is absolutely contrary to the church I know.
She also talked about her pastor, the Reverend Amos Brown, who you and I both know. Is part of the purpose of doing these non-network type interviews to let people get to know her a little bit more in this final stretch?
There's no question about it. You can just, if you're around her for any length of time, you know she has faith. I mean, because if she didn't, she would sound like Donald Trump. I mean, here's a person selling Bibles and has no faith. You can't be a Christian and have faith, Joy, if you hate everybody that is not like you. If you believe that there are people who are not deserving or unworthy, you cannot be. I'm so glad that she is finally starting to open up. It is hard. She is a very closed, private kind of person, nice as she can possibly be, but doesn't talk about herself much. I'm so really glad that she is, because faith is what drives her, and that is why she cares.
Marcia Fudge, thank you very much. The Honorable Marcia Fudge, thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated.